The Cranbourne Royal Botanic Gardens is home to an array of wildlife. Bandicoots, wombats, blue tongues, and all your favourites can live happily without the imminent danger of foxes and cats. But even with a predator-proof fence surrounding the site, the animals must cope with another daily challenge. I'm standing on the road that carves through the bushland and leads vehicles towards the visitor centre. As you can imagine, this creates a deadly dice roll for the wildlife that need to cross the road each day. But thankfully, our crew here at Cranbourne Gardens are blazing a trail to turn this would-be danger zone into a safe passage for wildlife. Let's hear from Tricia Stewart to find out more.
Here at the Cranbourne Gardens, we have visitors coming from all over the world to see our amazing botanic displays. We've also got 340 hectares of remnant bushland that surround that botanic display, and in it we have all kinds of amazing, unique Australian wildlife, including the endangered southern brown bandicoot. Now, while the visitors are travelling usually by car from point A to point B, so our front gate through to the car park, we also have natural wetlands on either side of that road, and our wildlife are using those as their point A and their point B and crossing over the road so that they can reach those resources. Now, what that means for my team is, as the ones who are the custodians of the bushland here, we manage the bushland, we manage the wildlife. Unfortunately, we were finding an awful lot of wildlife that were getting hit by cars on the road. That included reptiles, wallabies, and unfortunately also the bandicoots. And the saddest part about that is that often the bandicoots had pouch young. So they had joeys in their pouch as well. So we could lose 2 generations of an endangered species in the blink of an eye. We looked at that problem and we realised we couldn't just sit idly by. We needed to do something. We needed to come up with a solution that could see the wildlife live harmoniously in the bushland and the visitors get to come and enjoy our beautiful site and not be conflicting with that wildlife. We're really lucky here that we have a dedicated ecologist that works with us every day of the week, which is wonderful. And over the last 10 years, with the help from Dr. Terry Coates, we've been monitoring the situation. So we understand exactly where the problem was lying. We know what species were getting hit. We knew what areas that they were getting hit, where the hot spots were for those fatalities on the road, and we know what time of day. And now what that allowed us to do was to design a really bespoke, tailored solution to our road ecology problem. Now, this roadway does have plenty of road signage. We've got awareness signs, we've got speed limits, we've got speed humps, but unfortunately none of those things were effective in actually changing the outcome. So we needed to look at, instead of changing human behaviour, we worked with changing the animal behaviour. So what is our solution? Essentially, we just needed to look for a way to keep wildlife off the road. And we knew that the wildlife who were most affected by the roadkill were bandicoots and reptiles, so mostly terrestrial, small to medium-sized animals. So we looked at some under-road passages, some tunnels that we could use so that the wildlife could still get from their point A to their point B, but not have to cross the road surface. So that's where we came up with these underpasses, and they're a really novel kind of underpass. They use a certain type of material, which is a polycrete. So they're a single mould piece of tunnel, and they're a mix between a polymer and a concrete. Now that's really great because it means that there's not a lot of sound involved when a vehicle drives over the top of those. They've also got really good ventilation slots at the top, which allow us to let lots of light in and lots of air circulation and that sort of thing. So for a wildlife looking to cross underneath a road, they're not looking down a long, dark tunnel, potentially that's got predators and other obstacles in it. They can see right through, and they know that that's a safe passage for them to use to get to the other side of the road. While our road ecology project for small terrestrial animals is one of the first of its kind in all of Australia, the theory that underpinned it isn't actually that revolutionary. We already had existing drainage pipes, a smaller diameter, no ventilation, but we knew from camera monitoring over many years that small wildlife were already using those drainage pipes to get beneath the road surface. There's no fencing, so they could still cross the road as well, which is where they were getting hit, but we knew that they were quite open to using tunnels under the road. Now, the trick is, the tunnels don't work on their own. People often ask me, how do the wildlife know to use the tunnels? And the reality is, they don't. We do position the tunnels in spots that we know the wildlife are already crossing. So our monitoring showed us that there were hot spots along that road where wildlife were crossing and getting killed. So that's where we positioned our tunnels, which is a great starting point. But we also need to make sure that other wildlife who aren't at those exact spots aren't still just crossing over the road surface. And that's where our fencing comes in. So we use a solid black recycled plastic fencing, which means that as wildlife come up to the edge of the road, they hit that black plastic fencing and they just start to move along it instead. And they'll continue to walk along that fencing until they come to an opening, which is our underpass that goes beneath the road. Once we finally installed all 1.8 kilometres of fencing and 6 under-road culverts, we found it had a huge positive impact on the wildlife for the site. Anecdotally speaking, we've seen a reduction of around 98% of the roadkill. So previously my team used to drive along, particularly in the warmer months when a lot more wildlife is active, and we'd be scanning the road looking for roadkill to record and to move off the road. And these days there's virtually none to be found, which is just so exciting for us, and it's really heartening. And what it also means is we can present this project as a case study to other land managers and other road authorities. They're experiencing the exact same problems that we are. But if we can take this to councils and road authorities and present this as a solution, a feasible solution with science that backs it up, then we can see our positive impact replicated across the whole region, across all of Australia. So really doing conservation beyond the borders of the Botanic Garden. So even though we've had some really, really great outcomes from this project, it hasn't been without its challenges. Obviously for a roadway, we can fence it on either side, but it's still open at either end. So there is the potential for wildlife to still be able to get into the roadway, and we need to make sure that our fencing doesn't then stop them from being able to get out of the roadway again and put them at more harm. So we had to be resourceful and we had to think like an animal. And what we came up with was one-way emergency exits. So looking at our black plastic fencing, we knew that wildlife will travel along a fence because they can't see through it. So we used some see-through perspex flaps that only open in one direction away from that fence, away from the road. And we found that as wildlife, for example echidnas, who often still find their way into the roadway, when they walk along the fence and they can see through the perspex flap and they can see the bushland beyond it, they automatically turn and they move through that perspex flap. And so they exit themselves from the roadway without any problems. We also know that the same echidnas will walk along the outside of the fence on the bushland side and they see the road on the inside, but they can't open that flap to get back into the road. We know lots of wildlife use those emergency exit gates. Sugar gliders, bandicoots are quite effective at moving through these gates. So that was one way that we came up against a challenge, and then we managed to solve it really effectively. The early results from this project have been so inspiring. We know that it's working. We've still got cameras monitoring all of our tunnels, and we're still seeing koalas with joeys on their backs, echidna trains, turtles, all using these tunnels every day of the week. Every animal that uses a tunnel is an animal not crossing the road surface and potentially getting hit by a car. We just need to be mindful here that the animal's not crossing the road is crossing their bushland, and we need to be aware and we need to be protecting our unique wildlife at every opportunity.
If you'd like to learn more about the southern brown bandicoot and how you can help keep them safe in the suburbs, head to Royal Botanic Gardens Victoria's website. Until next time, stay safe on the roads and watch out for wildlife.